Woods will be helping me in a moment to analyse another memorable game. It takes us back to London in 1883, to the great tournament played at the Victoria Hall at the height of the British Empire. Victoria's reign saw a steady increase in patronage of chess. She was to die in 1901, the first royal funeral to be captured on film. The tournament had the distinction of being the first at which mechanical double chess clocks made an appearance. Sand glasses had earlier been used to calculate the time taken by each side, but the chess clock proper, with its double faces, was perfected by the 1880s by Thomas Bright Wilson of Manchester. Early chess clocks operated by the pendulum system, the modern push-button method being introduced at the very end of the 19th century. The game I have chosen is between the Prussian master Johannes Zukertort, a flamboyant figure who claimed to be an accomplished soldier, pianist and linguist, and the leading English player of the time, Joseph Blackburne, whose competitive daring earned him the title of Black Death amongst his contemporaries. Zukertort made his international reputation in this 1883 tournament, but there were already disturbing signs of his future mental and physical deterioration. Towards the end, he admitted that he was taking opium to calm his nerves. It was widely believed that as a result, the Prussian master lost his final 3 games to inferior opponents. He did go on, however, to contest the first official World Championship match against Wilhelm Steinitz in 1886. There had been no official title until that time, but now there was no ambiguity. The match was announced as being for the Chess Championship of the World, and the stakes of $2,000 were the highest ever offered. Zukertort started brilliantly in this 1886 showdown, but ultimately suffered a humiliating loss, winning 5 games, drawing 5 games, but losing 10. Zukertort was advised to give up chess, but there was nothing else he could do. "I am prepared," he said, "to be taken away at any moment." Seized by a stroke while playing at London's famous coffee house, Simpson's Divan, he died next day, aged 45. Blackburne had been an expert drafts player in his youth, but it was chess that later claimed his devotion, and he became a professional player in the late 1860s, achieving excellent tournament results. He earned a living by giving simultaneous displays, touring Britain twice yearly for more than 50 years. He revolutionized the conduct of such events, which had previously been treated as solemn, formal occasions. Blackburne preferred to dress in everyday clothes, to chat and joke as he played, and to refresh himself with the odd glass of whiskey. Zukertort's great rival, Steinitz, praised this 1883 game to the skies, eulogizing one of the most noble combinations conceived over the chessboard, one of the most brilliant games on record. The actual set on which the game was played is here with us in the studio. This red and white ivory set is one of the most artistic examples of the chess set maker's craft. It is now worth many thousands of pounds. Tonight we'll be using what looks like a standard Staunton set, but it is in fact special in its own way, because a unique computer design enables the moves to be instantaneously reproduced on your screen. Well, Donald, do you have any special chess sets?
I had one once which I donated to a prison near my city in South Africa.
A philanthropic gesture.
Well, it was. I'd read that the prisoners had no chess set, so I gave them a chess set, and then by a strange coincidence, 5 months later, I was sentenced to 6 months in the same prison.
Really?
On one of the publication laws, what you could publish against the government, you know. And so I thought I might be the first prisoner in history to benefit from his own philanthropy. But luckily, a clever lawyer got me off.
Right, let's take a look now at this game between Zukertort playing white and Blackburne playing black. And white kicked off with the move c4.
Now that is the English opening.
That's right, it's the English opening.
I like it, but I think you English grandmasters should play it more often as a gesture of patriotism, right? Do you like it?
I spent many years playing it myself. I almost earned a living on the international circuit playing nothing else for a while. But it's very interesting that the games we've seen so far in this series, white's always played e4 on the first move, which is, you know, the standard move. It's the move all the beginners play. And it's a sign of the increased sophistication of the level of play and the deeper insights into the game that the grandmasters were developing at the time, that we now see this rather unusual move,
and we're
c4
up to
being played. 1883.
1883.
1883. So we're seeing now a more sophisticated lateral strategy being introduced. There's no attempt to demolish the opponent in the opening, to blast him off the board. Zukertort is prepared to play a long game, a relatively long game, and simply try to outplay his opponent in middle game complications. And Blackburne's reply, e6, is an extremely solid response. He's not giving any ground. He's preparing to stake a claim in the centre by moving the d-pawn from d7 to d5. And Zukertort plays this. It's an unpretentious little move, just letting the bishop out, the bishop on f1. Nothing very dramatic so far. And Blackburne develops his knight. Zukertort does the same. And what a contrast there is here between this quiet, restrained strategic opening and the blood and thunder we saw in the first two programmes.
This is one of those uncoiling ones, isn't it?
That's right.
Yes.
And now Blackburne does something pretty advanced for the 1880s. He starts to develop his queen's bishop in fianchetto. And fianchetto is one of these funny chess words that dates from the Renaissance, when the modern chess game was introduced. It's really just the Italian for flank, fianchetto, flank. If you transpose an L for the I in fianchetto, you get the word flank. And it just means a flank development of the bishop.
And was that quite new at the time?
Very new indeed. I mean, it was known from the Indian game, but in Western chess, of course, this was quite unknown. People were busy putting their bishops in the centre, trying to sacrifice them against the opponent's king side, and so on and so forth. And this kind of lateral development was really very advanced indeed. And Zukertort replied with bishop e2, another very solid move. And out comes the bishop to the b7 square, the point of the fianchetto, and white castles. And Blackburne stakes his claim in the centre of the board. Zukertort does likewise. So we have a kind of impasse here in the middle. And out comes the black bishop. And Zukertort develops the knight, a sensible move. And black castles. And again, if you cast your minds back to the first programme in the series, the game between Anderson and Kieseritzky, you'll remember that in that game, in fact, neither side got castled. There was this tremendous wild battle where both kings were really wandering around in the firing line. But here, already by the 1880s, we see that castling for both sides becomes tremendously important. They lay great stress on the safety of their king, which a mere 30 years beforehand was a concept widely ignored.
Well, almost considered a bit wet.
Yes.
Chicken.
Yes, I mean, there was no thought now of really, accepting sacrifices honourably and, fighting battles on the edge of a precipice with no thought to the morrow. And these people are calculating very carefully ahead. They're building their positions up. They're establishing sound positions from which to launch their middle game attacks.
Beginning to think of castling as an attacking rather than a defensive thing.
Exactly, yes. So Zukertort now did this move. And partly, this is another one of these fianchetto, doesn't matter how you pronounce it, developing moves for the bishop. But also, it's a supporting move for the white central installations. He's backing up the pawn on c4. He's creating a potential avalanche of pawns in the middle of the board for the future. And out comes the black knight. And the bishop's developed in fianchetto or fianchetto. And now comes the first mistake of the game. The queen goes into e7. This is a positional error.
Call that a mistake, Ray? You're going to have to run that by me. Why is that a mistake at this stage?
Well, let's put the queen back where it should have been before. What black should do in this position is to play the pawn to a6. And the point of this little move
because of the knight.
Yes, it's to stop the white knight going into the b5 square.
Right.
Let's put the pawn back on a7 and see the move that black actually played.
I see, yes.
The problem with this is that white can now play the move knight b5.
Yes.
Which he did. And the black bishop is under attack from the knight. It has nowhere to go. It's exposed to attack by the knight. The knight will take the bishop. The bishop can't escape, so the exchange of knight for bishop will necessarily take place.
Yeah.
And this gives white the advantage of the two bishops. And in earlier times, people thought the bishop and the knight were approximately equal in strength. But they began to realise round about now, partly as a result of games like this, that if one player could get two bishops against bishop and knight, or against two knights in the early stages, this conferred a slight advantage, an infinitesimal but definite advantage. And in years to come, people didn't make mistakes like this. They didn't give away the two bishops quite so easily in the opening. But Blackburne was quite unaware of this, and he did it quite innocently, thinking that he was going to get counterplay in the centre.
Right.
But in fact, the bishop pair, and the mobility that white gets in the centre after this, weighs far more heavily. So Blackburne's response was to play the knight into e4, and Zukertort wasted no time at all. He took off, capturing this valuable bishop. And Blackburne took back. And doubtless Blackburne thought, as many players of the day would have done, that black now has an excellent position. He has a compact mass of pawns in the centre. His knight's on an aggressive square. In fact, everything looks fine. And he can even liberate the bishop on b7 by taking off the white pawn on c4 at some stage. But the trouble is that these two bishops in the more flexible position do give white the edge.
Now, can you, as a grandmaster, tell that if you walk in off the street and you look at that position, because frankly, to me, black looks okay. But can you tell just by glancing at it that he's heading for trouble?
This position, yes. I mean, there might be somewhat more refined versions of the same thing that would be touch and go, but this particular position is, for a grandmaster, already clearly good for white. And the key to it is, in fact, white's next move. This is an excellent move, a retreating move. Now, retreating moves for masters of 30 years beforehand would have been considered almost dishonourable. They only did it in extreme circumstances when they had to save their queen.
Non-macho.
Non-macho, yes, exactly. But this move is to challenge the black knight on the e4 square. It really undermines the main strong point in the black position. And Blackburne tries to reinforce it. And now, the next key in the white plan, the black knight is directly threatened.
Quick question, Ray. Why not the pawn move before the knight move? Why didn't he push that?
Because the knight was on the square already.
No, this one.
Yes, you see, let's go back. This was the
position. Oh, that's where he came from, sorry.
Yes. See, the knight has to go to this square to make the pawn move possible.
Okay.
And then black reinforces the knight. And now you see the retreat of the knight has made this move.
Yes.
It's a good question. If you see the position, you know, cold.
Coming in cold like that, yes.
So now black has no choice, really. He must trade off the knight. And the white queen takes back. And as I said before, Blackburne must have thought he was doing fine, because now, when he takes here, he's also liberating the bishop on b7. Now white could take back with the pawn, which gives him a big pawn centre, but then black could put a rook on c8 and the bishop on a6, and the white pawn on c4 would become a target. And instead of that, Zukertort played a very safe move. He just took back with the bishop. And now white's threatening a move like this, which takes over the whole central area and clearly gives white domination in that part of the board. And Blackburne obviously felt that he had to do something about this. And what he did, he may have done with slight reluctance. He played the pawn to d5. So once again he's locking in his own bishop. But at least after the white bishop drops back, black's concentration of force on the e4 square, the knight, the pawn and the bishop, stop white from playing his pawn from e3 to e4.
Right.
And this gives Blackburne the time, while white is trying to get in this important thrust, to develop serious counterplay on the c file, which is really black's territory. And he kicks off by playing this move. And you'll see this game is really very sophisticated by the standards of the previous ones. Both sides have got solid positions, they've developed their pieces, and made no obvious mistakes. And Blackburne's mistake was really quite a minor one. And for an inexperienced player, it might be thought, well, this game must end in a draw because the positions are so balanced and so level. And it's a joy to see how both sides from this position develop strategies that, in their opinion, will try to give them winning positions. And Zukertort played this. He's really piling up his artillery in the centre of the board, desperate to push through the advance e3 to e4. And Blackburne continues with his plan. And now it comes. White starts to make the breakthrough. But Blackburne, undeterred, doubles the rooks. And now the stage is really set for a fierce battle. But Black has got this domination in the c-file he's always wanted, and White's played the move e3 to e4, which is what he wanted too. White pushes on. The knight's attacked. It's got to go back. And now he pushes on again. And the threat is to ram this pawn into Black's guts.
Yes.
And if that happens,
to put it elegantly,
dreadful things are occurring. Blackburne stops it. He plays g6. And now White can't play the pawn onto f5. Now many people here would be tempted to play a move like this, g4, to support f5. It's very risky, because it also, as you can see,
opens up, yes.
Yes, White starts to make space in front of his own king.
Very vulnerable. Yeah.
20 years beforehand, they would have played this, not Zukertort. Zukertort is not just a butcher, he's also a scientist and an artist. And what he plays is this move. He's bringing up the forces first. He's preparing to swing this rook across, perhaps even to this square, to bring it into nearer contact with the black king. And now Blackburne, having defended for so long, decides he's going to strike back. And he plays this. Now, this move blocks the whole position on the king's side. And White has the right to take en passant.
Right.
He has the right to go behind the pawn and take it. If he doesn't do that, he can make no progress.
So he does it?
He does. He has to unblock. And Black takes back with a knight. And now the advance he always wanted.
Yes.
f5. And you see that the pin on the e-file makes it very difficult for Black to take this pawn.
Yes.
But Blackburne's ready with his answer. You know, he isn't a fool. He's not, you know, going into this with his eyes closed. He counterattacks. Knight in, attacking the white queen. Zukertort takes it off.
Yes.
And Blackburne takes back. And now, to use a much misused term, White starts to decimate the black king side. And he plays this, he takes off. But the effect of bringing the knight into the centre and forcing the trade of White's bishop means that Black's weakened the light squares in the white camp. And Blackburne ignores what's going on the king side. He knows that his king side is ultimately indefensible. He must rely on counterattack. And he plays this move.
Threaten the queen. Yeah.
Rook to c2. White ploughs on. He takes the pawn, check.
A question, Ray. Why would he not have taken that white pawn first before that? Because he must have known that.
Yeah, if he takes the white pawn first, his own king side's in tatters. And White would simply bring a rook over to the g3 square, play something like queen h6. I can show you. This is...
Yes, because that's going to go, isn't it?
Yeah. For example, if he takes this off
right
in this position, the white rook would come here, and then the queen is coming over to h6. It's very hard to defend that.
Right, okay.
So Black must rely
yes.
on counterattack, not on defence here. So he plays the rook into c2. And White takes off the pawn, check. And the king goes in the corner. And White plays pawn on to d5, check. And Black blocks it with e5. Now, in this position, it's said that Blackburne thought he was winning.
Well, that astonishes me, frankly. I mean, why did he think he was winning?
Well, the point is that although White's completely destroyed the shelter around the black king, the black rook on c2 hits the white queen, and it hits the white bishop. And the queen must move, after which the bishop is lost.
Right.
But now comes the move which made this game so spectacular, which has made this game go down in the history of chess. He solved the problem of what to do with the queen and the bishop by putting his queen here.
Yes, yes. Right.
It can be taken on this square.
Yes.
The queen can be taken. But Blackburne didn't dare do it.
Because
He
of
played
the
this
fire.
move. Now, the question is, and we must go into this, we can't ignore this question, what happens if the queen is taken? And now there's some very beautiful variations, which I can't really,
Yes.
and I don't like to show too many variations in these games because they
Got to with this one.
We've got to, we've got no choice. So let me show what happens if the queen's taken. Queen takes queen. Bishop takes pawn on
Check.
e5. Check. King takes the pawn on h7. The rook goes to h3. Check. The king goes to g6. Rook goes to g3. Check. King goes back to h7. The rook goes in to f7. Check. The king goes to h6. Bishop goes to f4. Check. The king must go to h5. And rook h7 is checkmate.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely fantastic. So bear with me a while for a moment.
Right.
And I'd like to stay and admire the checkmate, but we must get back to the game.
Right.
And must reconstruct the position. So bear with me while I restore the position.
Well, you've certainly established why he couldn't take it.
So now we have the position in the game again. So what a wonderful coup that was.
Yeah.
And now Black's strategy has been wrecked. He had to play
He's
this.
got to cut that off, yes.
Yeah. And now another wonderful blow. Rook here, check.
That is absolutely beautiful, isn't
He
it?
can't
Yeah.
take it, because
Yeah.
bishop takes e5, check, forces checkmate. Ultimately he must take this rook, but he can't take it yet. The king takes on h7. And now all the white forces converge for the massacre. Queen takes e4, check. King to g7. Bishop takes e5, check. And now the rook, Donald, that he spurned a few minutes ago, he's got no choice. And he's surrounded by white pieces. They're bursting all over the place. It's a complete dam break here. He has to take it off. King takes rook. And now the final elegant blow in this wonderful game. A game that, they say, electrified the spectators. He played check.
Oh, yes.
And Blackburne capitulated. He resigned. If he takes
Yes,
it with
he
the
can't
king,
take that.
queen takes queen,
Yes.
check wins. And if he takes it with the queen, then queen to e8.
It's so elegant. It is so elegant.
Isn't it? I just get a thrill whenever I see that game. And, I just can't explain it. It's like looking at the Mona Lisa, the Van Gogh irises all rolled into one for me. It's just an amazing game. It's so brilliant. Well, Donald, thank you for your
One is
comments.
speechless. Thank
Anyway,
you.
Zukertort's win was regarded by the experts of the day as the most impressive game ever played, but there were still further gems to come. Join us next week for a sparkling game between the very first world champion, Wilhelm Steinitz, against the great Russian Mikhail Chigorin, played in Havana 1892. Meanwhile, it's goodbye from Donald, myself, and the Thames chess team.